Is this yours? This one's mine. Okay. You're welcome. Thank you.
We started on September 8th.
Yeah.
We'll be done. So we open on the 18th, we'll be done on the 17th. We keep going until the weather turns. We just move outside to the
Does anybody need an agenda? I have several copies.
I'd like an atrium, but this afternoon actually to get the taller stuff. Yeah. It takes a while. We've got.
Did you get your copy? Yeah, absolutely. Did you get your copy?
I took a picture of it.
Oh, okay, perfect.
Sorry,
No, I made tons of copies just in case.
These kids are brave. No older than 12 years old.
I will give it another minute, and we'll go ahead and get started.
St. Ives Church. Okay.
Nobody wanted to sit here.
We'll just pretend he's here.
much pressure.
I just saw him downstairs.
Yeah, he was here this morning, so is he still here? Did he leave and come back? I don't know.
He's judging pumpkins.
I was gonna say, is he the dinosaur I saw on her?
Oh, somebody said dinosaur. Oh, okay. He gets the fun stuff, right?
I saw him raking his leaves yesterday, so it's a little bit of a balance.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. We might have another joiner, so welcome everybody. Good afternoon, almost. I want to thank everybody for being here, taking time out of your day. I know we're all very busy, so I appreciate everybody being here to talk about tourism as it relates to the city of Rock Island. So I am Samantha Ganji. I am the city clerk, and I'm also the ARPA program manager. And so as many of you know, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, the city was allocated $26.5 million. And out of that, there were allocations specifically to tourism. And so City Council wants to know, hear from all the stakeholders and wants to know what can we do for the city of Rock Island, with the understanding that tourism is a regional approach, but this money has to stay city of Rock Island. So keeping that in mind, this is a very informal environment, so please feel comfortable to speak freely. And there's the dinosaur. All right. Yeah, start everybody off with a little laugh. Happy Halloween, by the way. And so there's no right or wrong answer. This is just a collective approach of ideas, so please feel free to share your perspective. That's why we're all here. So the focus group, I'll be, of course, being recording everybody. Is everybody okay with being recorded? We've also got a YouTube, so you can go back and listen if you like. I will also share all the minutes that I do with the whole group, so you guys can go through those as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I have specific questions for each of our discussion topics. However, you know, I mentioned that tourism is a regional approach, and so I did ask Visit Quad Cities to come, and I just wanted Charlotte Morrison, she's the Vice President for Quad Cities over marketing and communication of Visit Quad Cities, and so she can give us some information on the Visit Quad Cities Rock Island visitor profile, so we can talk about that briefly. And then I did put on here the Regional Tourism Master Plan. We're not going to go over it. I just sent that out so everybody's aware of the regional approach and the strategy that Visit Quad Cities is trying to do to move all of us as the region forward. So, Charlotte, with that, if you are ready.
Go over this now?
Yeah, I think we'll start with that and then go from there.
Okay, so Datafy is a company we work with. We actually geofence. Is there a question?
I'm sorry. Go. Oh, okay.
Datafy is a company that collects mobile data from people within your area. We can track our residents, we can track visitors. And we have geofenced attractions in the area, all entire downtowns, complete cities, meeting convention facilities, hotels, you name it, it's been geofenced. And so that's gathering data. This report, actually, if you want to open it up to the first page, this goes from, furthest we can go back in data was January 30th through, 31st, excuse me, through September 18th. There's still data being collected even now. I just grabbed what I could grab at that time. And it was for a 60-plus mile radius. So this is broken down. Visitor days means the number of days they actually stayed in Rock Island. They were here doing something. So there were over 9.5 million visitor days spent in the area. Total trips were over 3 million. That's how many times these people came into Rock Island. And the average length of stay was 3.2 days. So that accounts for those visitor days spent and the number of days that they're in market. They could be staying with friends and family, they could be staying at hotel, Holiday Inn, Bally's, Quad Cities, casino, an Airbnb, you know, that's how the average number of days they spent over that time period. Unique visitors is actually the number of actual visitors that were tracked. So there were 863,523 visitors tracked coming into Rock Island from that January through September of 2022. Main thing you want to pay attention with is visitor days. That's actual foot traffic in the area. So the next page, these are points of interest that we have geofenced in Rock Island. And if you're having questions, you don't understand something, it took me a good 6 months to work with Datafy to really be able to give out this data and fully understand it. So as I mentioned below, these are the top points of interest for Rock Island. Obviously, you have the city, and these numbers reflect the visitor days spent, not the number of visitors, the visitor days spent at that location. So we have downtown Rock Island at 570,000 plus, Bally's Casino, and I will also mention that if you look at the data, there was a big, huge drop with COVID. The highest year we had for visitation was 2019, and our goal is to reach that 2019. Across the board, Iowa, Illinois are reporting still lower numbers than 2019. And there's other influences with economy, COVID, you know, it's still here, that is affecting that. So these are the different locations. KOA Campground, Harris Pizza. People love Harris Pizza. We picked the Rock Island location, original location. We have Longview Park, Saki Golf Course, Circa 21. And again, remember, these are visitor days spent. So these could be repeat visitors that came back in again and went to that location. It could be new and repeat. So we've done a recap of everything that's geofenced here and the number of visits. So your top cities coming in were Chicago, that's on the next page. Tracked via cell phones was Chicago, Cedar Rapids, Dubuque, Peoria, and you can read down the list of where those visitors were coming from. Now, if I took this data and completely changed it from a 0+ mile radius, all these numbers would change because you're gonna have your local market in here. Festivals like Chalk Fest, I pull the data on for Quad City Arts to determine how many locals, how many out-of-market people attended that event. I do it for Alternating Currents. I did it for Molene's Sesquicentennial when they had their event, because that whole area is geofenced, so we can track the traffic in the downtown. So we can also pull this information for certain festivals and events that are happening. The next area shows and this is pretty typical across the board, no matter what city we're pulling data on. Our prime visitation comes from within the state of Iowa and Illinois, followed by Wisconsin. And we do a ton of marketing, digital, print, television, across these markets. You know, we're targeting Des Moines, we're targeting Chicago. A bulk of our money will go into the Chicago market and the western suburbs. We also advertise in Chicago, Peoria. So that gives you an idea. And the other cool thing about this, we can see the results of our advertising. We can run mobile ads through Datafy that target people that have been here and people that are like similar to them. And we get a report back, say a month after the ads run, and we can tell how many people came back into the area after being delivered that ad, whether they were a day tripper, whether they spent the night. It's pretty crazy stuff that your mobile phones do as far as tracking. So I reviewed again the visitor days by length of stay. And day trip across the board for this area is probably the biggest chunk. And one thing we are working as for Visit Quad Cities, that's why we're doing so much marketing out of this region, is to increase those overnight stays. We're marketing our attractions, festivals and events to get people in here from a greater distance than Cedar Rapids. That might be a day trip. Iowa City might be a day trip. We all go our little day trips. We go up to Iowa City. Maybe you're going to Trader Joe's, or just going up there for a football game. Those are day trips. You're in and you're out. I also gave a report on weekday versus weekend. Your biggest days in market are Friday and Saturday, and that pretty much holds true across our whole region. Your top demographics, I have the age. Top is 45 to 64, followed by 25 to 44. Your income level, 100K plus is the highest coming into the market, followed by 0 to 50. And know that 0 to 50 means when they're tracking phones, the person has to be 16 years or older to track. We can't track anyone's phone. They can't track any data on anyone that's younger than 16. So that's why you'll get some of that 0 in there. You'll have some of that smaller group of, kids that aren't working. Household, predominantly in that 1 to 2 to 3 to 5 number of people in household. Education level, high school and bachelor's. And then we have ethnicity broken down with white, Hispanic, Black, Asian, and other. The monthly volume by visitors, you can kind of start seeing 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and 2022. You can see 2019 and 2018 were really amazing, but 2019 just, it blew the heck out of, blew it out of the water for numbers. And you can see January, what each of those years brought in. And you can see July is a big one, and August, and June. So then I took the downtown's top POIs. I'll tell you how this is broken down. In Datafy, we have attractions, and we have golf courses as a category. And then there's miscellaneous, like the downtown concert area in here, in downtown Rock Island, where Ribco has a lot of shows, and then Arts Alley. Those are kind of those filler spots that we want to monitor when there's events going on. So Davenport, during this time frame, there were over 1.6 million trips to downtown Davenport, 1.1 to downtown Moline, 712,780 trips to downtown Rock Island, and then Bettendorf, and then LeClaire. And I think that's interesting that, LeClaire is a very popular spot, but Rock Island was beating out that market. So another thing I did over the weekend was actually, if you look at this sheet, is I took those points of interest and did a data poll based on income and age, what these people were doing. So, for example, golf courses, that would include Saukey and Highland Springs. 37% of the age group of 45 to 64 were at those two golf courses. I will say Saukey was more popular. And then camping RV, so camping RV trails would include like Blackhawk State Historic Site, KOA Campground, those outdoor recreational places, Schwiebert Riverfront Park. You can see again the breakdown. The miscellaneous, again, as I mentioned, is Arts Alley, and the concert area is downtown Moline. So when we gather that data, so downtown is geofenced. But then we have other geofences within that geofence. So if there's a concert on the main stage down there, we can just pull the data from that area. Your hotels, which would be Bally's and Holiday Inn, it does the breakdown there as well as restaurants in the area, the downtown. And your attractions, if you go back to the other page, attractions would be like Quad City Botanical Center, Circa 21. Actually, no, Circa is under, is under live music and theater. So is Rostox. But you can start seeing that age group and what they're doing while they're here. Income level does the same amount. Is pulling those people that make that income, what they did while they were here. Again, golf courses for that 100K plus, camping, RV trails, the outdoor activities, miscellaneous, the things, as I mentioned, the downtown Arts Alley, the concerts, events happening downtown. Restaurants. So it's just showing the data, not only from the age demographic, but the income demographic. And what we do is we will take all of this data for an entire area, and we will determine a marketing plan to reach those visitors, and the ads are customized to those interests. So if we have someone that's really into live music and theater, there are specific ads like that target that and those people, and say it's a mobile digital ad or any digital ad. When they click on that ad and we get click-through reports, a number of impressions, we reached over 18 million people last fiscal year. Our fiscal year runs July 1 through June 30th. And those ads actually link to a landing page on our website. We just don't take them to the home page because we want to see what they did when they hit that landing page. So like we'll have a landing page and it will be highlighting Circa 21 and their upcoming shows and different festivals, events, performances at theaters with links to that information on our website. We want to drive people to the website, grab them with what their interest is, and then take them deeper into the website. Everything's linkable to drive them further into the website for information. So in the same way, they can target people that are like those people that have the same interests with those mobile ads. Alternating Currents used Datafy. They bought ads through Datafy through us and ran to promote that event. And they focused more on 60 to 150 mile radius, I think it was. So that's kind of the data, it's amazing what it collects. These are estimates. It's not, this is the number.
Right,
These are
right.
estimates based on mobile use. If you're not on your phone using it, you can't track you.
Okay.
Or if you have something blocked.
Okay.
But this gives you a really good picture of what your visitors are doing in Rock Island, their age demographic, their income, everything.
Well, thank you so much, and we're doing a little bit different. I had her start since we were still waiting on a few more people, but it looks like we have everybody here. So we'll go ahead and do introductions, and then if anybody wants to speak officially during public comment, but I will say again, this is very informal. So we've got Jean from Backwater Gamblers here, Jack Cullen from the downtown from the Chamber of Commerce, and our city managers here as well. So if anybody, please feel free. This is informal. I want everybody an opportunity to give perspectives.
I'd like
and-
to say Backwater Gamblers is very popular among our visitors, especially those traveling with family. That opportunity, that's unique to our area, that they can go see a water ski show.
For free.
And
So it speaks to that income too, and that also the ethnicity demographic too. So let's go around the room. We'll start with Brett, since you're on that end, and just introduce ourselves. We're all stakeholders here in this city, so let's get started.
Sure. I'm Brett Hitchcock with Circa 21 Dinner Playhouse and the Speakeasy.
I'm Brian Schmidt, a principal planner with Bi-State Regional Commission.
Judith Gilbert, Third Ward Alderwoman.
Bill Nelson, I'm the retired Park and Rec Director, but got myself involved with the zoo and the Botanical Center and Foundation for the Park Department and a number of other things, so
So you didn't retire.
I did not, I retired very badly, is what I've done.
I'm Roger Ruthart. I guess I'm the retired editor of the Dispatch and Argus. I was on the district board for almost its entirety doing those events, and I'm now the head of the Rock Island Grand Prix kart races.
I'm Minda Powers Douglas. I am the owner and main tour guide for QC Hansen History Ghost Tour that's down here, and we also do investigations where we work with different local small businesses to help raise money for them as well.
Okay.
Julie Heber, I'm a Rock Island resident.
Dylan Parker, Fifth Ward Alderperson for the city.
Ryan Willey, Executive Director, Quad City Botanical Center.
Charlotte Morrison, Quad City Arts. Or
Sure.
Quad City.
Congratulations. Yeah.
He doesn't know he's hired.
I'm actually with Quad Cities International Airport, also current chairman for Visit Quad Cities, so of the volunteer board.
Excellent. Kevin Maynard, Quad City Arts.
Lisa Huncha, I'm the Assistant Director of a Research Library at Augustana College.
Gay Shannon Burnett, and I'm not really sure which hat I'm wearing today.
All of them gay, all of them.
Ozzy Bwike, African American Council for the Arts, but I'm also a member of Rock Island African American stakeholders.
Okay, thank you all again for being here. And if anybody had any questions, I think I had asked the group to reserve any questions until after Charlotte had explained the data that we received. Does anybody have any questions or wanted any discussion on that any further? I think, Roger, maybe you kind of had a...
Question I had was how it compared to like 2019 and prior, because you were just giving us numbers from now, but you answered that, so.
That-
I said you answered the question that I had.
okay,
Because I was
yeah.
just wondering how these numbers compared to previous years.
Yeah, and these are, I can actually do another report that digs even deeper to that. Our data, as I said, only goes back to January 31st of 2018. But anything you want to know, I can pull it. Like, we need to pull a report on your race.
Yeah.
Be interesting to see.
Oh, yeah.
That'd be good to see.
Give me the dates for the last couple of years, and I'll be happy to pull that
I'll
for
get
you.
it to you.
You'll email me.
Jean, I see you with your hand up.
Your data showed 19 compared to 21 when we came back out of COVID.
Do you want a copy of it? It's,
I'll say he can have mine, because
think I've got an extra one.
Sorry.
The reason I ask is because we had seen our attendance almost double from year 19 to 21. And it's like everybody, oh my gosh, when you get out,
Right.
and we've
But
seen
over-
everything go sky high.
Well-
Last year, of course, then it settled back to the normal.
Right, and that's something we've seen as well, especially outdoor oriented. When COVID hit, the outdoor activities that they could do outside, and even the few years after that, have stayed really high. And a lot of that is safety outside. And then if you want to take that step after, you know, what everybody had been through, option is an outdoor activity. And we're still seeing our parks across the board higher than they ever were. My God, bike rentals that we do, actually, they're free. We don't rent them. You can come in and grab one. Those just skyrocketed. I mean, you couldn't even find a bike to buy around here when COVID hit, because that was the only place you could go that was kind of safe, was outdoors. But that trend still continues. I can pull specifically for outdoor rec and for you as well, if you like. You got my email? You don't have my email? No. I'll give you a card before we leave.
Sounds good.
Charlotte, of the 3 million total trips that are listed, is that including day trips as well as that just overnights?
That's everything.
Okay.
Is there a report where we can kind of dial into which visitors we might share with other downtowns? I find this portion very interesting, like how many people might go for a day trip but stop for lunch in Davenport but come to Rock Island for dinner and a show or something like that. I'd be
Yeah,
curious
we
to
can
know where
pull.
the crossover is.
Yeah, there very likely also might be a correlation between the number of hotel properties.
Yeah.
If you look at that, because that's where you're pulling those out-of-town people in, so there's a
Yeah,
saturation of
because
hotels.
Davenport
You have to
has
stop
the
there.
highest number of hotels. Rock Island, there's 2 hotels.
Yeah.
Moline is probably third, followed by Bettendorf, and then, it's Davenport, Bettendorf, Moline, and Rock Island, as far as number of hotel properties. Davenport has a ton of hotel properties.
Where would someone that comes to Rock Island for lunch but sleeps in Davenport fall on this report, or are they on both?
Will it be under restaurants on this one?
Okay. Which town would they be under for their trip?
Well, that's more data, it's digging deeper, I
Gotcha,
have to
gotcha,
pull.
gotcha.
Because I only pulled specifically on Rock Island.
Gotcha.
Another interesting pull would be even locals. What are they doing? We can pull a whole radius that's just locals and see what kind of foot traffic is happening there as well.
Yeah, I'm assuming these aren't unique, so it could be if somebody comes into town, they could could pop up in 5 different places on this if they pick those different locations, because just simple geofence, greater than 60 miles out, you went, 4 different locations for your hotel, where you ate, played around the golf, and caught a show. So,
Do you track the reaction you get from people who are hesitant to come? Is there any way of measuring that and saying how you react to that? For instance, our event the last couple of years has become totally sort of Midwest-based, because like this year we heard, well, I'm not coming because the gas prices are so high.
Oh, yeah.
And then we can tell them, well, gas prices are not the same here as they are in California. And then we have people that say, well, we're not flying in this year because of all the flights that are getting canceled and all that. We don't want to get stuck somewhere. If I knew ahead of time that other people were hearing this and how they were reacting to it, it would be helpful in trying to market and promote.
Well, what we do from a marketing standpoint, we're following all that kind of stuff happening. And because when the gas prices went up, we switched our marketing completely and drew it in tighter.
Okay.
And actually, even with the high gas prices, all USA Travel and all that was reporting that people were still out traveling. They wanted to get out. It's still that effect of COVID. People wanted to get away. But we kind of watch those trends and adjust our marketing. I mean, things can change in 6 months. So
Right.
the marketing budget we've placed for April, May, June of 2023 might have to be tightened in. It all depends on the economy. But that's just something we watch. I mean, I'd be happy to sit down with you and talk about, but you know, what might
Well,
be.
it's good to have a sense of how you do that.
Yeah, like TV stations will immediately start doing special advertising offers, like Cedar Rapids will contact us and say, hey, we got to offer a, trip on a tank of gas. And they want you to buy into that because people are looking for that trip. They're tighter on money, so they aren't going to spend the night. They're going to do a day trip. So you focus on that as well.
The one cross-reference that I think would also be interesting is on your top demographics of age and income. And it's really the income one, the 0 to 50K, whether or not they are weekend or weekday people. Because that suggests to me that people are potentially coming on weekends to shop. And then that visitor is looking for a different experience than those that may be coming all week long. But you need to do a cross-reference to see what that is, but could be interesting.
Okay, so for the sake of time, if anybody has any more questions, I want to wrap up the data part of it. That's a very important part, so thank you very much, Charlotte, for your time and sharing that with us. And I'm sure if anybody after wants to, more about their organization or hear more, I'm sure Charlotte would be happy to give you her card. Or, and then I did send out the strategic plan, the tourism master plan from Visit Quad Cities from the regional. I don't want to necessarily talk about it here in this context, but I just wanted to make sure everybody understood that although we are here specifically to talk about the city of Rock Island, that the tourism is a regional approach. So if anybody else have anything for that subject? If not, we can go ahead and move on. So some of the discussion topics, and we can either start with Brett or start with Gay, or anybody can just speak freely to the next question. So given the data you've learned, understanding the city of Rock Island, we basically have our assets right here, right? A lot of them were listed, maybe missing a few probably for the city. What kind of thinking, what is missing in the city of Rock Island? What do you feel from your perspective or experience that's missing, that maybe there's something we can do or need that would bring people to our city, in addition to the assets that have already been outlined here? So I just want to start off with that topic.
I think the festivals and events that used to be down here have really dwindled to nothing. And that was a draw. And I have some ideas. That I'll hand out.
The other one that I think we miss is our tie to the river. We have some boats that come in. We've got Twilight that's upriver, we've got Celebration Bell, but we have a demographic, like it or not, that's looking for excitement. And I don't see that tie to the river that people can get to. It's kind of like the speedboat that's up and down the river, that kind of thing.
And also, don't forget the Rock River.
And the Rock River. I mean, we've got paddling and those kinds of things, but we have a tremendous number of people who come to see the river, and we don't capitalize on it. I'm going to go sideways from it, because my little side thing is I do tours when the river boats come in, and it's really interesting to hear people's comments about, well, how can I see more of the river, or how can I get to whatever, and we don't do a good job of welcoming our tourists that do come here.
So who do you do the touring through?
Actually, we do it through Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Yeah, Visit Quad Cities. They're trained and they volunteer and hop on the coaches with
We hop on the
people.
buses and give history lessons when they're here.
Good to know we have Rock Island representing those.
And that's another one is, we got to do a little better job probably of smoothing with some of those boat companies to get them to cross the river. We've got one that does,
Viking does,
Viking is now.
yeah.
We've got one of them that doesn't at all, and that's frustrating.
But I think we're,
That's, real quick with the cruise lines, we pitch them the tours.
Right.
And they make the final determination.
it's-
We cannot tell them, no, you don't want that, or, no, why don't you do this? They make the final decision, and then their passengers also have input, and that's how they're chosen. It's just like you take a Viking cruise over in Europe, there's all these tours offered, you get to pick which tours that are really of interest to you, and they do it,
Yeah. No, it's the boats make the decision, not
yeah, not us.
us, yeah, not CVB.
I know Harburg and a couple other places are being pitched for Viking
Yeah.
next year.
Oh, that's good to know.
we're missing retail
Botanical
too.
centers
The
on it.
retail component, we need critical mass. That's how you're going to bring more people in. And the development or the redevelopment of downtown is a critical part of that. I mean, that's what's going to get people down here. That's what's going to attract Viking to want to start stopping in downtown. We've been actively after them too, and it's not an easy group
No.
to break into, so.
it's not.
But we need critical mass. We need more retail down here in order to get bodies done. And I'm speaking specifically about the downtown. Obviously, there's lots citywide, but specifically the downtown, we are missing that retail component. And as the bars have gone away, you know, and now we're down to just a few compared to what there used to be back in the day, there certainly is more room now for more retail to move in that plaza area and across the downtown. There's plenty of open storefronts, but you've got to have that component before the tourism is going to come in.
Because visitors too are looking for that unique experience. Downtowns on a riverfront. That is also unique, and you have multiple downtowns here. And it's all about experience for the visitor when they come in. What's different, what's unique, what sets you apart from other destinations?
I don't think 20 years ago Leclerc would have registered on any of this, but they've done such a good job of developing their
God.
downtown with the music and everything else and making it so
Well-
inviting. That's why all of a sudden they're starting to register on
Right.
some of these things.
And antique archaeology.
Right.
History Channel, it's like, that was gold.
We do have some antiques on our hilltop area.
Yep.
So that's
We promote those, we have the antique shops. There's actually a section in our 2023 guide. This is 2022, the guide that's in front of you now. In 2023, we're highlighting antique shops in the area, and I can't remember the headline it did, Shop Antique, Unique, and Boutique. Well, we're still promoting, you know, there's malls and there's 53rd, but the push is towards those unique shops and what makes us different, where they can find different things. And then there's also a section that I just finished writing that's locally made. And it's highlighting all of our local products, from Bogies to Lago Marcinos, Wild Cherry Spoon Company, Buttercup Candles, Whitey's, Dots Pots. I mean, it's amazing. Most residents don't even have a clue of the amazing.
That are here.
Bogies just got recognized. The state of Illinois has an Illinois Makers Program, and then they promote all these Illinois makers. I submitted Bogies, they made it. Navarro Canoe has been on there. Wild Cherry Spoon Company is also a maker, Illinois maker. So that adds to the business for those locally owned establishments. Let's take Dots Pots in Moline, just down the street from WQAD. Her business was okay. She was doing good. Beautiful stuff, beautiful work, pottery. I submitted her to Enjoy Illinois. She got recognized, and bam, They are having a heck of a time keeping up with throwing pots and plates and creations. I couldn't believe it when I walked in there. The shelves were almost completely vacant. So those kind of things, that local flair is of interest not only to visitors, but people that live here.
Go ahead,
So,
Julie, yeah,
comment,
please.
Like, a few times I've noticed when people are staying at the hotel and they wander out of the hotel and they're gonna walk around downtown, they're looking for things to do, and there's just nothing to grab their attention, really. There's so many vacancies. But I know, if I was staying at a hotel and maybe, like some of those retail spaces at the lower part of the hotel, I mean, it would be really nice to see a gift shop. I mean, I don't know who would run that, but just Rock Island sweatshirts, Rock Island things that we can, you know, be creative and, kind of improve on what we have, whether it's the boats or the trains or the history or the Indian heritage here, or, maybe it would have local foods or local made things, but just something that a refrigerator magnet, you know, something that they're gonna take a little something home and remember Rock Island. You know, we have such a beautiful city here, and I just think we really need to improve on what we have and grow what we have. And
I think what would be beneficial tying into that too is, and this is not a jab at Charlotte because this is not what she does, but getting that satellite CVB station finally open in downtown. I mean, that sign's been in the window for years now, and there's dirt all over the door and the windows are filthy, but getting that satellite station finally open down here to where people can go in and they can find out what's going on, and it would be specifically Rock Island. I mean, that's kind of what you're talking about.
A little information area. You know, I know they did have the one down by the bridge, but something convenient to those people those thousands of people that are staying at the hotel. Those are the people that we really need to,
Yeah,
find some pluses.
the visitor center, you know, we've looked at, we have renderings already done.
Yep.
There is a black mold issue, and it's 11,500 for that little area to repair. And we don't have 11,500. Pandemic hurt us too.
Well, thanks for the update, because we
Yeah.
sat in those meetings, when we saw the plans, like, well, the plans are done, how come
Yeah, the
nothing
drawings are
happened? So-
cool as heck.
Yeah, they are.
But that's a deal that's being worked on, because Kenseth Property owns that.
Right.
That owns the Holiday Inn. So that's really between us and the hotel. But yeah, there's a mold problem. There was
Okay.
issues with the pool leaking. I think that was the big issue.
Charlotte, I wanted to highlight something that you were talking about, experiences. Because I think that is someplace that Rock Island, while very much underdeveloped, we really are sitting on. I've been likening it to, we are a community in the 1800s that's sitting on a gigantic oil reservoir, but nobody has figured out how to build the pump, right? How to tap into it, and that's really how I have thought of Rock Island when it comes to our heritage and our culture. When we're talking about experiences, it's so obvious, it's staring us in the face here in Rock Island, whether we're talking about our history with respect to the Rock Island Lines, Lead Belly, the Broadway neighborhood
Sock
that
and
I live
Fox.
in, yeah, the Sock and the Fox, or we talk about our ethnicity history, whether our Swedish history, our African American history, right? We have a unique story in Rock Island. In many ways, it's the story of America, right? Westward expansion and all that jazz, the railroad, the steamboats, Effie Afton. And so when we're talking about experiences, how do we do a better job as a community, as a city, to develop these assets, this oil reservoir that we're sitting on? How do we turn that into something that the boat cruises can say, oh, if you want a tour of the Rock Island Lines railroad history, you go to here. I mean, I think of Dubuque or Clinton's Sawmill Museum, where it's a there, right? There's a place that you go if you want to learn about Clinton's lumber history, which Weyerhaeuser, right? I mean, like, we clearly have a lumber history on Rock Island. So it's those types of things that I think Rock Island, when compared to, we're not going to compete to the 53rd Streets for that type of thing, right? I mean, we're geographically different. But where Rock Island really could lean into and excel when we're talking about tourism is experiences, our history.
Yeah, Dylan and I had this exchange a while back, and I said, well, here's, I think it was 12 things I said, these are literally rooted in Rock Island history. No one can steal them from us. You can't do an event anywhere else on the first NFL football game or the, gangster John Looney or whatever it is.
Right.
And I had a big list of them. He said, oh, yeah, well, we have this historic resources plan that the city adopted. And I went and looked at it. It was, I think, 2016, and I can't see a lot that's been achieved off that. My point I was going to raise, though, it plays to that a little bit, and that is, I have a lot of history being involved with the events in the district as well as the Grand Prix. And the fact that this is even happening in Rock Island right now, we ought to be screaming and yelling and making sure everybody knows about it and knows that Rock Island has made a priority to approach tourism and promote it and get people involved. Because that hasn't always been the history either. I can remember times dealing with events and dealing with that where you went to I won't name names, but you'll all know who I'm talking about. It's not the current city manager or his predecessor, but where you make a phone call and you never get the phone call returned. You send an email and you get a one-sentence reply that didn't answer the email. That was the extent of the city's approach to dealing with events. It was almost anti-event. And then, and there's some politics involved, different people on the council and things like that too. But as that evolved, and Randy came in and tried to start, dismantling what he was given and improve things, and then again, then he retired. But I mean, my event with the Grand Prix is something that deals with the city. I deal with 10 different people in the city for that one weekend, and they're all amazing to work with. Now, it'd be a little easier if I didn't have to handle all 10 of them individually, but that's what we do, and they've all done it before, and they know what I'm going to ask and that sort of thing. But the fact is that the current situation, I think, has the right attitude where they can take whatever comes out of this process and actually move forward and apply it and get some gains from it, because that hasn't been the history. That's part of why events don't exist anymore and the district isn't around and all that, is because Dari and City Hall didn't agree on how things were being done, quite honestly. So hopefully whoever, whether it's Jack or whoever gets involved in running with the ball, I think the situation right now is much improved over how it's been, but part of that history is part of the issue here too.
Thank you. Alderwoman Gilbert, I see you have your...
Following up on Roger and Dylan's comments, I think that we have some very successful events or attractions, and I think we need to figure out how to really multiply exponentially what they could be. I happened to attend the Grand Prix one day this year, and it was, and I'm not a race car fanatic like my husband used to be. He used to love to come down to the Grand Prix, but it was so exciting. And so while I was, watching the drivers go around, and is it correct that we have international drivers now coming or something? I mean, that's huge in my mind. But, so I'm watching the people who are coming, and some of these people, you could tell, they must be regulars, and they must have come and set their tents up, at the crack of dawn, and they tailgate, and they bring their cooker, and everybody in the family was there, from the newborn baby with their headphones to, great-grandma and grandpa were there too. And it was a big, big deal and very, very exciting for those people who were there. It was just like, wow, this is so cool. And here it is in Rock Island, And then later in the summer, I had the opportunity to go for the first time to Backwater Gamblers after I was extended an invitation. And Julie came with me, and they were like, oh, this is great. And it's great family entertainment too. I think the biggest negative for me was that you guys just need better parking. The city needs to help you figure out how to get much better parking so you can get more people in there. Julie was great about getting a spot, but it was like, okay, we need to like figure that out. But it was a very cool, unique event. And you just sat there and like, we were kind of close up, weren't we? And you just marveled at, I mean, for us, it was a nice night weather-wise to attend, but I felt sorry for all the swimmers or the performers because, I mean, watching them come out of the water, and I'm like, oh God, they must be freezing. And you could see the age. There were very young, like school-age kids, all the way up to like, what, 70s maybe? Yeah. It was remarkable. But we need to help, like, these two kinds of things and help them, you know, take it to the next level, like Dots Potts did, you know, kind of thing.
Well, part of it too, I think, is once we get them here, we need to give them the exposure, you know, to want to come back. Like I know on our weekend, I mean, Brett and I have been through this for years, but, you know, it's a lot of extra work for his people because we have the streets all blocked off and we have noise and all that. But on the other hand, there's thousands of people that come to the races who didn't know Cirque was there, but now they've seen it and they'll come back. And one thing we heard over the years from people coming to Rock Island for the races is, oh, I didn't know this was here. They saw the Botanical Center, they saw the, you know, Circa, they enjoyed concerts on the plaza, they had a restaurant that was really cool, it treated them well, and that's, when they leave, that's what they're talking about. They're not talking about the race, which is pretty much what they expected. It's all the stuff they didn't expect that was a positive for them. So, I mean, that's what we try and emphasize when people come here. Make sure and take in all the places around you. It's been difficult because of COVID. You know, people aren't, some of them aren't doing the same hours they had and things like that, but, you know, we try and work with anybody. I mean, I've told a million people that we bring all these people into town, take advantage of it to come and do something during the event. So we have, you know, the Quad City Storm comes down and does a street hockey thing, and we've had some car shows and things like that, but all I say is, hey, if you just come down, set up a table or a tent, or do whatever you want to do, just make sure and, you know, use your social media or whatever to tell people you're going to be here, so hopefully they come down too.
Gay, go ahead.
I have a question.
Yes.
Where are we envisioning the tourists coming from? Because
That's a great question,
it's
and that's
hard-
on my next part of it, is marketing and wayfinding.
have an accessibility problem, because it's hard getting in and out of here, and mostly all you can do is drive. So sometimes if I take the train, I drive to Rockford, and then I take the bus up to Union Station, and then I get on there. I've done that for going to the airport, because even when you can get a good price out of Moline, the connections are bad. They always seem to have delays when you're coming back in here from wherever I've gone, coming back to the Quad Cities. I always have problems with my connections, and it's always late, and it's the last, you know, corridor down the airport I didn't even know they had, coming back into the Quad Cities. So tourism is part of accessibility if you're really trying to have an extensive reach, because if it's too hard or expensive for me to get here, I would say, well, you know, I can go there cheaper. I know my son comes from Brooklyn to DC all the time, and they go all these different places when you're in New York and other places. So that's one thing. How are we approaching our accessibility problem? Because I see that as a problem, because it's always really hard for me to get out of here, unless I like drive to Chicago, sometimes to Des Moines if we can get out there.
See, and I get the opposite reaction from people that come elsewhere. They say, you know, if they come in from Newark or California or something, it's, oh, your airport is so easy to get through and get around and park at and all that compared to where I came from.
Well, no,
They think
that's-
they see it as a positive.
Well, that's true. I lived in LA for 15 years. The airport itself is easy to get around to. I'm talking about getting in and out of it, because the flight, accessibility isn't bad. The prices are terrible to fly from. I mean, it costs me more, just the same amount to fly from Moline to Chicago for a connection, because I had to go to the East Coast on an emergency, than it did from Chicago to DC. And so that is what I'm saying about, yes, once you get here, it's easy to get around in the airport, but getting in and out of here is the problem. There's no trains, so you really can't have a train connection, and trains are pretty bad as far as, timing and stuff. Yeah, and so, they canceled a lot of flights. They used to have a flight directly from here to DC, and it didn't work. And then some of your flights, just going into major airports, we don't have direct connections.
Our perspective, a lot of our visitors are national researchers, international. We have a lot of visitors from Sweden, naturally, and they come and they don't have a car, and they're staying somewhere, and they need to get to campus, and then they want to do something in the evenings. They're walking, it's not that friendly. And we actually got a bike, and we lend them a bike to get around their suites. They're never used to biking in all weather.
God bless the Swedes.
We're really challenged that, and then, there's buses, but just, I was looking at taking a bus from campus just over into Davenport, and it was gonna take 40 minutes and 2 transfers or something, and I was like, okay, but I do think that accessibility of getting around, we have less traffic maybe, but I don't know, for us, the lack of cars. And then I will say too, at Augustana, obviously, we bring in a lot of people from that 60-mile radius out of prospective students coming, and I would love to see something that's, they're coming, they're learning about campus intensively, sure, but why don't you learn about what your adoptive town would be? Something that when they're here for that experience, it's not just campus, it's the community. How else could they integrate and maybe, want to stick around after they graduate?
That's great. That's a great point. Augustana is a staple, and how do we, partner? And then, back to kind of what Dylan said, in terms of, he talked about diversity in forms of, ethnicity as well as the other components of that. And, are we capitalizing on our Swedish heritage, or, our African-American heritage? Those are things too that kind of bring those, make Rock Island kind of stand out too in terms of those unique experiences that we're talking about. And how do we, our current assets, how do we ensure that that's successful, but also some of the things maybe we haven't tapped on. For example, I'll use Moline. They did a great job with their Mercado on 5th. They actually had a private donor that gave a ton of money, so that helped them. But they have done so well. I just saw the recent numbers, and because they do have a large Hispanic population in that city. We've got a large, not Hispanic, sorry, an African-American community too, or Swedish community, or whatever. How do we, I don't want to say capitalize, but how do we draw those out too? So
We kind of have 2 different places where we end up bringing in tourists. And one of them tends to be events. And we have some really great runs. We have the cross-country event that Augustana does at Saukey, which brings in colleges from all over the place. And I don't know that most people know that exists unless you unless you drive by, so to speak.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But the Grand Prix, obviously, we used to have the concerts and the Summerfest. We did the train festival, sorry, that's, my thing. But those all bring in unique groups. And it's hard to build a tourism program around a whole lot of individual unique things. Not that they should go away. Those are really great and they're important, and they bring money that wasn't here before. So those are important events. But we also have these really great ones, frankly, Circa 21, the Botanical Center, Schweber Park, the water ski show. Those tend to be those, call them the daily or the weekly activities that happen that bring us people day after day after day. And those may be the ones that you really have to kind of think about, how do we bolster those? Because if we bolster those, they will help support those other unique events that we have. We don't use, that sounds bad, we don't use Augustana like we should. What an opportunity to get people in and walk around the campus, but that's difficult too. There's not a place to park. We don't have opportunities for people to go in. And to some degree, we really haven't explored with the university, what are the tourism opportunities that we have with them? And, I mean, I have no doubt there are some amazing ones that we haven't even thought of. Augustana's kind of like that other city that is within our boundary, but neither one of us know the other exists, so to speak. It's kind of a weird deal. So, as we kind of think through these, I think it's important that you think about how do you support those that do the daily or weekly or whatever you want to call them events, and support those, whether that's your businesses, whether that's places to collect, whatever that is. But what are those other daily places that maybe we can bring people in? And then we build some of that stuff out, those businesses out. So
I
just
think
a
probably everything.
mindset.
Everything we could talk about has that same thing. Just reacting to what Lisa said, I mean, she's trying to get people into Rock Island, but we should be trying to get people exposed to Augustana or, Saukey or whatever it is. That there are opportunities there that people don't even know exist if we don't help tell them.
Yeah.
I just want to throw a couple of thoughts as we're working through this, and I don't know if I come from a unique perspective. I'm obviously work in travel, not just tourism, but also some of the things I've learned being on the board for Visit Quad Cities. And I, as an outsider from the Quad Cities, it came from Seattle, a large community, actually. It was the suburbs of Seattle. And brought my young family here, and it was just an opportunity, career-wise. Came, thought it'd be a 5-year deal. I was like, yeah, I can live anywhere for 5 years, figured out, move on somewhere else that would be where I want to ultimately raise my family. But an interesting thing happened once I got here and started to experience some of the things that I didn't know existed. When I had a headhunter reach out to me, they said, hey, we have this opportunity for executive director position in Quad Cities. And I was like, nope, nothing. I've never heard of it, coming from the West Coast. And it wasn't until I started to look at some of the literature that was put together, and it had a lot of stuff that had come from Visit Quad Cities, that I was like, oh, holy smokes, how did I not even know about this community that's, Quad Cities as a whole is almost 500,000 people. I mean, it's a large area. And Rock Island is a very specific piece of that is, I think, really interesting because of the history. Mm-hmm. And that's where people, if they haven't heard the Quad Cities, but lots of times they've heard of Rock Island, or they've heard of Davenport, they've heard parts of it. And it's interesting, I think there's two pieces to this. There's the first piece of marketing the Quad Cities. There's a lot of people like, I don't know why more people don't come here. It's like, well, because we're not doing anything to market the community. And one of the important factors that we look at is when we looked at unique visitors, a lot of these visitors are shared visitors. So if they come here, regardless of where they're staying, if they're staying in Davenport, if we have a venue or something of interest in Rock Island, it's 10 minutes to come over the bridge. I mean, you can get anywhere so quick. So the goal, there's the ultimate overarching goal of bringing tourists, that outside money, into the community, whether they're staying in Rock Island, Moline, Davenport. If we have community assets in each community that, oh, I'm here, I'm going to catch a show because this sounds really interesting, that can be something we can start to work on. I think having what I've learned about Visit Quad Cities and how amazing their staff is and the access to data, they do so much behind the scenes with the limited resources that are there. So that's one thing from the board level, going around to all the communities saying, hey, shame on us for taking, not taking advantage, but underappreciating what Visit Quad Cities does as the CVB. They do everything without a multi-year contract. Right now, they don't know if they're going to exist next year. And so communities have to come together, because lots of times in the event planning space, we're competing as a community, whether it's Rock Island, Moline, Davenport, Bettendorf, whoever, 2 years down the road for a big conference that's gonna bring people in. And so having a CVB that they don't know if they're gonna have their funding stream next year or 2 years down the road doesn't work well. And coming from the business side of things, one of the things as a board member, getting ready to go to all the communities and say, hey, we need to work on shoring up a multi-year agreement for pooling our resources from every community here, because Rock Island can do something to go out and market Rock Island, but I think the best thing we can do is every community pools their resources with the experts and the staff that this is what they do every day, and they're so good at it, to get our name of the Quad Cities out of the Quad Cities. Everybody in the Quad Cities knows what's here. And one of the interesting things, I think our target area is that Milwaukee, Chicago, anywhere from that 4-hour drive distance in, that's where we have such a huge opportunity. And if you look at the demographics as well as how many people live in that area, we could be just killing it. But I was at a soccer tournament in Racine, Wisconsin a couple weeks ago, and we were playing a team out of Milwaukee, and everybody, I could hear people on the sidelines like, oh, Quad Cities, where is that? Like, they had no idea, and it was so, I was kind of sad, 'cause I'm like, that's kind of our target audience of bringing people in. And finally, oh, Rock Island, yeah, I know, okay, Davenport, and like, oh, that's actually not too far away. It's just interesting hearing this conversation. Those are the families. Again, these are travel soccer teams, so they fit very well into some of these demographics of who we should be looking at. So I think there's that piece of all the communities coming together to think big and promote the Quad Cities as a region, because each community can win in that. I think it's amazing that Rock Island's stepping up and seeing the value of tourism with this ARPA investment. I think one of the best things we can do, to Charlotte's point, is look at some kind of festival or event that can really draw on the heritage of the community, what makes Rock Island really cool, because there's just a lot of cool things that when you start to dig into, like, I had no idea. I've lived here for 4 years and did not know that. Kicking it around with some of the staff from Visit Quad Cities, talking about the film office and doing like a film festival or something like that, where we can draw into synergies that the city's already developed that's not happening in the rest of the Quad Cities, because then again, when we have 10 million visitors coming in, it's going to be the spot in the map that pulls everybody that visits the Quad Cities to Rock Island, and you're going to get those outside dollars being spent in the community. That's where you get that amplified investment of some of these venues are amazing, like Circuit 21, the Backwater Gamblers. We'd hosted an airport event out there for staff to get all the families out there, because it's right next to, I mean, you can see it from my office, and yet we don't go there and appreciate it as much. So I think a lot of this is an important piece to quality of life for people that are already here, that keep families wanting to live in the Quad Cities, especially post-COVID, where it's a whole new environment. People can live with remote work and telework. You can kind of live anywhere. Why would you not want to live someplace where you can afford a lot more of a home and a different lifestyle, where it's a 15-minute commute to the other side of town versus 2 hours to get to the other side of town? So I think we're sitting in a really, really good time to be thinking about these big questions. And I just think it's exciting that we're actually all in the room as a community thinking about this. But I think there's multiple prongs to this. I think one is we need to see the value in having Visit Quad Cities there as the champion for all of the Quad Cities, and getting the Quad Cities name, Rock Island, Davenport, that everybody outside of our little niche. And then the other piece is starting to think about what we can do to really promote and grow some of these existing events, but also think about what's not here in the community, what's not here within 100 miles, 200 miles that makes Rock Island stand out. And maybe it's something like a film festival, maybe it's something that's ties into some of the manufacturing history or being on the river. Certainly, when we went through a sense of place visioning for the airport with this terminal redesign, it was very comprehensive. We had an architecture and design firm out of Minneapolis that led it. And it was interesting because we had stakeholders from all of the community. And one of the things that kept coming back consistently was this nautical theme, which just seems so weird being in the Midwest. But it's because of the river history of the confluence of 2 major rivers right here in Rock Island, with the Mississippi and Rock River. So that's part of I think our identity as the Quad Cities, but certainly in Rock Island. So I think those are the 2 pieces we need to look at. What's going to be the best bang for your buck? There's never an easy return on investment when you talk about tourism, but I think having an event in Rock Island that's going to be pulling people from all around the region, but then also thinking about, as a community, we really need to do anything and everything we can to stand up, visit Quad Cities, and I think a multi-year agreement. You think of places like Galena or some of these places where everybody knows of it. It's a small community, but killing it in tourism. The fact that we get outspent by Dubuque on marketing as a community when they're so much smaller than us is kind of not a good thing. I mean, we can all agree on that. And that's where we have these resources. If we come together as a community and every city within the Quad Cities says we're committed to this, let's all come together. We stand up, visit Quad Cities to get the name out there. And that's the whole thing where I've gone to some of these mayors and said, hey, we have amazing assets in our community, but what are we doing? No community here is going out and marketing in Chicago to say, hey, we have the stadium, we have this venue, come fill these seats at our new asset or resource. That's where Visit Quad Cities comes in. So that's the other piece. We come up with this event, festival, a venue, and then rely on Visit Quad Cities to get that name out there and fill those seats with outside money. So just high level, that was kind of what I'm thinking. And being an outsider, I don't want to sound disrespectful, but I feel like the community is so self-deprecating in so many ways, where it's like, oh, we're the Quad Cities, we're Rock Island, I've lived everywhere. I've been all over the country, I've been around the world, and what we have here in the community, the Quad Cities, greater Quad Cities, is very underappreciated by Quad Cityans, and it's something that we need to do more to get that out there. And because I think there will be, the other investment is tourism, there's this conversion factor. We bring tourists in for major events, people get exposed to this, and there's this conversion factor, like, you know, I could live here. I could buy a house here for $120,000 and I'll have almost no house payment. That same house in Chicago is $1 million, and suddenly you're getting these residents that are getting converted and paying more taxes. You can start to expand the community finally. So this can lead to a lot bigger things. I think this is a really important, kind of fun thing to start thinking about. So I really appreciate Dylan inviting me. And, you know, I have my soapbox here as the chairman of Visit Quad Cities, just because I think it's something that's underappreciated. They're in the background doing so much for the community with very little investment from the communities.
Real quick question. As long as I've been here, which is like over 30 years, this has been an issue, and I'm sure Charlotte's heard it before, but that is that Quad Cities isn't on any maps. And in fact, the 4 cities aren't even on all the maps. There's usually like Davenport and either Moline or Rock Island or something. And I don't know how you approach that. I'm sure CVB has thought and talked about it and probably tried things over the years, but that's the big, I mean, when we talk to race teams from Texas or something, it's only to our advantage that we are the Rock Island Grand Prix, because we can say, well, we're in Rock Island. But if we tell them Quad Cities, they have no clue where that is. And it's almost a negative to say we're here, because then you have to go off on that whole explanation instead of whatever your marketing effort was going to be.
And I think events can all be unique to being the Rock Island Grand Prix, because that's a good thing. It's a piece of the identity.
Right.
So just a comment on, when you talked about Dubuque. So Dubuque is, I mean, I don't see, the only thing I think of when I think of Dubuque is their interactive museum. So they have that museum, and even my daughter's school, when she was young, we went up to Dubuque so that's the only, I mean, I know there's skiing and things like that, but we do have Snow Star here. It's not in Rock Island, but it brings a lot of people in. But that museum, and recently I was at Knox College with my daughter on a college visit. They have changed that alumni hall, put millions and millions into that, and that upper level is a museum. They have all the history of those buildings there, you know, from the presidential debates to, you know, just, and I think here we have so much to offer. I mean, so much history here. I'm totally agree with everyone on that point. And if we could have a focus of, you know, is it going to be, you know, trains or boats or the river, or, you know, that we can just continue to build on, and that is my point. I see that beautiful Argus building over there, and I just think even the citizens of Rock Island really support Rock Island. We love Rock Island, and I think people would really back something, donate to that, give things they have, you know, you talk about the Looney and everything we have. There's so much to learn about Rock Island. And it's not only that, but our district, it should be arts, entertainment, and dining. I mean, when you talk about all the culture of this city, and now we have the immigrant population coming from all over the world, and, I mean, that's a big part of our population now in Rock Island. Restaurants, everybody likes to go to a good restaurant and try different foods. You know, we need to, I believe, like in Rock Island, we need to kind of somehow, it doesn't have to be a bar district, it could be a food district, you know. So that's just my thought on that.
Your question, I think the one we're answering was, what are we missing? And I think what everybody's saying without saying it is storytelling. You know, people want what is unique to Rock Island?
Why Rock Island? That's what I
Why
say.
should I come there?
Why
and
Rock
only
Island?
there? And what can I learn that only exists in Rock Island? I want to learn the history. I want to see the skiing. I want to do Circa. So I think after hearing everybody share what they're so passionate about, it seems to me what we're missing is packaging that in something simple for people to digest and telling them what to do, or inviting them to do something that we want them to do. But that's all people want, is something unique. They want to learn, and they want to have a personal touch to it. So everything you just touched on, I think, is extremely important. When we see the boat tours come through the Botanical Center, my office, it's across the washroom from where hundreds of them use the bathroom. And they don't know it, but I listen to everything they say. I even have a little...
Within reason.
Outside the washroom, of course. They always talk about the stories that they've heard while they were here, whether it's from people giving the tours, or whether it's the story behind Dot's pots, not the pot themselves, but about the people that make the pots, or, you know, the history, or whatever makes Rock Island Rock Island. So, kind of to summarize, as everyone shared their favorite assets and experiences, it sounds like what we're missing is a package and a story to tell.
Well, and then how to tell it.
Yeah.
You know, the challenge that I have as an not-for-profit organization with mostly volunteers is, how are we going to get this word out? Either, I mean, like I said, does anybody know someone who has a good handle on social media who could just do this for us? So we pay them a small amount or whatever. And I couldn't find somebody. They either want to do it full-time or they don't want to. And we had this, Quad City, that's where promotion we put together with 30-some things that, famous drivers that have been at the Grand Prix and all that sort of thing. And I didn't launch it because I wasn't convinced that I could, we'd get all the pieces, out in an organized manner.
Sometimes you can't wait for organization, you just gotta do it. And then see if you can do it again, and then do it again. I have a little tiny business, very tiny business. I've been doing it since 2019, and I've grown from me to about a group of 16 people. And we do this, they do this mainly as volunteers, and we get people who have been in this area forever. We have people that come here and say, oh, I made a weekend of it because we heard about you having a ghost tour. I started the ghost tours because I thought, because I've lived here forever. My whole life I've lived in Moline, but been a Quad Cityan. I've never just been in Moline. I've been on both sides of the river. I'm not scared to cross the river like I've heard some people are. Oh my God, I gotta pack a bag. I might get stuck over there. But I've gone all these cities, these wonderful cities, small and large, and I've gone on ghost tours and different tours, and I'm always looking for a ghost tour. And for a number of years, I kept saying, why don't we have a ghost tour here? And I finally just said, screw it, I'm gonna do it myself. And I did, and people started coming. And I'm finally getting people to help me out with the social media stuff, and I've done stuff on myself, but I've had to just kind of pull it out of nowhere to do it. And it does suck when you don't have a staff of people that will come in on it, but that's really where it starts. And what you said about storytelling is so important. People want to know what's going on. I owe you a debt of gratitude for the book because holy hell, what an amazing person, in a horrible bad way, Looney was, and all the people that guy, and like some of this stuff, I mean, he was nuts and weird, and then I have to remind myself that, oh yeah, and he's also very vicious. Because, you know, running out of a building, dressed up with a fake beard after he burned it. I mean, that's just, these are great stories, though. These are what people want to hear. When I ask people, you know, we have up to 15 to 20 people on a tour, how many of you heard of Looney? 2 people raise their hand about each time.
Say road to perdition.
Yeah, say Road to Perdition and
Oh,
you got them all.
I say
Yeah.
Road to Perdition, and then I tell them what all was wrong with Road to Perdition.
Yeah.
Like, when you see
Thank you.
1933 come up on the screen, I just about turned it off right then. I had seen it before, but I wanted to remind myself, I'm like, oh, they changed the names, they changed this. I'm like, oh, God, no. So, yeah.
It's always a favorite on the bus tours that we do.
Yep.
But it becomes one of those yeah, they changed his name to Rooney and,
Yes.
you know, but it always gets everybody's attention when you talk about it on the bus. It's just a fun, and again, it's those stories that you find ways to make that live. And that's a lot of the trick. I'm not sure, one of the other things that might not be worthwhile is actually to talk to, it's kind of a little survey of our providers of services of what is it that you're hearing from your people that you wish you could, what do they ask? Can I get food here, or where can I go, or, because I think that would start to give us some clues about what we're missing, and that might be where we really need to start putting more energies into those things. I know,
I think wayfinding's on the,
It is, yeah. This is leading right into the wayfinding.
yeah.
it is an important thing.
Because it's, and part of it is for each of us as those attractors to also be able to go, well, you should go to, if you like this, you should go there, or you should do, because that helps continue to promote that activity. But I think that's some of the, what I hear from people is, where can I go and buy a gift, or where can I go and buy, and they're not there.
Yeah, and to echo what Bill's saying, I mean, Quad City Arts, that's what we're hearing downtown, is, you know, what is there, where can I get food and where can I go buy gifts aside from, you know, our shop? And most of the time, it's during the day. I mean, there are things, you know, bars and different things, restaurants that are opening in the afternoon and evening, but during the day, I mean, there's almost, there's nothing downtown. And that has been the largest struggle for, I mean, for most people that we're talking to for.
Right.
They want a remembrance of the Quad Cities.
Yeah.
Whether that's, I mean, I have them, they all end up at German-American Museum to buy Boji's mustard. I mean, that's the big,
German ornaments.
and they all come back with Boji's mustard and Christmas ornaments, and I'm like, we're missing an opportunity here. I mean, they're hungry, that's what those people are looking for, is something to have that, remember that experience with. It's all about experience. That's what they're spending their money on.
And back on the river, it's too bad we can't buy the Rock Island Boat Club and have that rehabbed and make a nice restaurant there. I mean, look at the Captain's Table, how beautiful that is, and how popular that is with now music, food, I mean, the view, everything. I mean, we kind of have that, but I mean, I know that's privately owned, but, I mean, that would be a
Make a good
landmark.
three-story bar is what it would make,
We've been there
and restaurant.
sometimes.
From my
See
perspective.
the river from there anymore.
No.
From a city council perspective, a lot of the time we deal with the 30,000 foot or whatever your cliche is, right? And I always reflect on what's another thing that the city does, right? I mean, we pick up garbage. And when the city picks up garbage, do we put together an ad hoc focus group and kind of see where, no, I mean, we have real institutional backing behind something like picking up the garbage. And whether we're telling stories, whether we're just connecting the dots of, hey, did you even know that Visit Quad Cities had this data? Whether it's visiting, I mean, doing all of the day-to-day work of planning the big events, of developing the resources with the haunted tours, developing the people in the private sector that want to start developing new tourist attractions, right? There's got to be somebody doing it 40 hours a week, maybe not 40 hours a week, but there's got to be somebody doing the work. Because after this meeting, I'm sure that we all in this room have not, this is not the first time we've had this conversation, right? And so how do we start building a new institution or enhancing a current institution to really put in the day-to-day work of everything that we're describing here? And frankly, that's where my head goes to when we're talking about this ARPA money. How can we use this one-time infusion to not just, there's one event and we're done, and then after that event, kind of, well, what happens? But how do we use this as seed capital, if you will, to grow a sustainable entity or whatever that can not only throw next year's event, but the year after that, and the year after that, and reach out to philanthropic partners and blah, 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 and grow this thing. So that's where my head goes to from a policy perspective. Everything here is a great idea. We do need to package this. But it's not only what do we package and how, but who. Who is, like you say, who's going to do the social media and stuff like that. So
I think that's a really important point. I mean, part of that, the value to that is having somebody besides the people at CVB who have a knowledge of the industry and have a knowledge of the city and how to apply it. Because, I mean, for instance, with all the events that Rock Island used to have, you know, we started an event, it was, you know, you make what my weekend, and we brought in all the reggae bands, and there was like one festival a month during the year, and so everybody went to that, and it was the only place you could hear reggae music. Well, after a period of time, there was two events, and then 3 events, and then there was 2 every weekend. And then everybody was bringing in the same reggae bands during the year, so that by the time the festival got there, everybody said, well, I already heard them. You know, and so it's just kind of, but there wasn't the person with the vision who saw this happening and said, okay, time to go back in the trenches and try something different.
yeah, I think Visit Quad Cities is a wonderful asset for the region. And as city council member, the city funds Visit Quad Cities in part. We're obviously not the only one. But I've always supported our contribution to Visit Quad Cities. And Ben, I'm more than happy to have a conversation with you about what that looks like into the future. But it's also, so we have the region, but we also have Rock Island, right? And sometimes Rock Island's assets may not lend them, so we don't have a mark, right? We don't have or whatever. And so how do we do both? We gotta do both, basically, is what I see. As Rock Island, we gotta hitch our wagon to the regional effort, because yes, a rising tide does lift all boats, but at the same time, how do we make sure that the local Rock Island people, the Circa 21s or whatnot, also are, you know, a part of that as well? We have to do both local, Rock Island, and region.
Yeah,
And
it's
state.
creating the asset and then promoting the asset.
But maybe Visit Quad Cities could help Rock Island develop a package or a template that we can use to, when you mentioned the cross-country event at Saukey, I happened to be driving down 31st Avenue that morning, no parking, I'm like, what's going on? And then I remembered having read something, and then you get to 38th Street, all the buses are there, and I keep hearing from local businesses, we're not marketing to the parents who are coming to Augustana with their kids, both before they enroll, just as site visits, and then after, I don't know how many weekends a year parents visit, those kinds of things. Or backwater gamblers, you know, letting the people who come to that, there's X, Y, and Z, or did you think of this, that, and the other thing? But even that small thing, you know, packaging additional things you can see and do here will eventually start paying dividends.
So listening to all of this, I am a planner, so I try to think of other examples and
we
try to
got
bring
you.
what works elsewhere back home, because I'm also a resident. But, so we mentioned Moline and LeClaire as well, but I think those communities had plans, long-term plans that they stuck to. And I don't see the same thing happening in Rock Island currently, of specifically visitor-focused. So with that, there has to be a level of cohesion behind it, and an entire team of people pulling in the same direction. So that might be a hurdle, and maybe goes into wayfinding as well, because it has to all be part of a larger package, but.
The other thing is, you have Augustana, you have their students. Downtown should be Augie-centric as a place for the students to go, with retail, with nightlife. And that isn't there.
They're getting bused down there
They
at
have the
midnight.
bus run, but
I think they stopped that in part
had
because it was a
stopped.
security issue, because it's not perceived to be safe. And so I think the outgoing president a few years ago encouraged Augie students not to come downtown Rock Island.
And go to Moline.
Right, and go to Moline.
Bus is active Friday and Saturday nights.
Yep.
It's been reinstated.
It's been,
But
yeah,
That's
they're
it,
back.
okay.
There was a period where they,
Right, where they said, don't go downtown Rock Island, and that gets back to the security issue, which none of this is gonna work until the security issue is cleaned up and people feel safe coming down here, opening a business down here, and know that their patrons are not gonna be harassed.
Yeah.
I know another big thing that was a loss was Bucktown and downtown Davenport. Those artists have nowhere to go now to show their work.
That's a,
And that would be a retail thing for downtown Rock
And
Island.
that had been a very active thing here in Rock Island of the art walk that
Yeah.
went on, and there were about
Yeah.
And s-
6 businesses, 7 that were open.
That was
and,
big.
and speaking to that, and you can put this on your sticky, because I'm gonna go into the next thing since we have 20 minutes left, is that, I think it was our manager, now he just stepped out, Todd Thompson had said he had read, or somebody in the nation, I don't think it was Illinois, took ARPA funds and bought like a vacant property or whatever, like a house, which we've got plenty in Rock Island, as everybody knows, and used that and paid for it and cleaned it up and used that for artists, for free space for artists, and then they promoted it within the city, and it's been pretty successful. If you Google it, there's an article on that, and maybe somebody's already more aware than I am, because I'm not in the art world, but I do remember hearing about that, and that was a pretty interesting concept.
There's a warehouse district in Chicago, and it was years and years ago. I went there. My brother lives in Chicago, and they were taking these old warehouse buildings, old buildings, not even warehouses, old businesses that were just nothing anymore. And it became this huge arts and cultural area. And the artists would actually have studios in there where they could, throw pots, paint, there was all sorts of things. And then the lower space, you could go up into their studios, but that lower place, the main level was a gallery with all their works for sale there. And it was packed. I mean, and that expanded. Then restaurants came in because they wanted to be part of, and the restaurants were cool as heck. I mean, very different. But they took an area that was just cool, and it's the hopping place to be now.
St. Louis has one of those now downtown. I don't know the name of it, but it's an old manufacturing, it's an old warehouse, it's something. And now when you go into that, I mean, all the parking is beautiful. You go into that space and it's different. It's a food court. It's literally a food court of various different types of food. And you can go in there and get anything you want. And it's very popular.
Well, you look
And
at it,
now it's expanded to just shopping.
yeah, and what is it, Milwaukee? They have that huge food market that you go in there and you can buy amazing deli, cheeses, all of that. You've been there, haven't you, Bill? I can't remember the name of it.
First floor of Vandergans building would be perfect for that, the one on Second, whatever's happening with that.
Yeah,
Or-
there's
or the
something
whole
going
artist
on, but
building.
I don't know
Got the
what.
basement, the main floor, and
Yeah.
2 upper floors, so.
Yeah, this is, it's a concept that's, just about every, really communities our size and larger have them.
Yep.
And they're filling them up quite easily. Most of them are at about $1 a square foot, and they're at various sizes for studio space, and it is, highly successful. Some with food halls in the main floor or shops. It's an incredible asset and needed here in the Quad Cities.
Well,
Yeah.
I was at Bucktown for 10 years.
Yep, you
so
were.
I was one of the original
yeah.
artists there. And so the beauty and the magic of Bucktown was that it was an artist community. And the studios were there, and it was a place to work and create. The retail part came with it, but we always had events. We had open house every Friday. People would come through. We had school tours come through. I know I was really good about trying to get different schools, especially the schools in marginalized areas, like, you know, to come up there and to see what working artists do and how studios go. It's something when Bucktown closed down that we said we really need.
Yep.
But not so much just from tourism, and not so much just from, you know, the economy of it all, because art has its own economy, but for a place for art and culture. And I think most people buy art because they get to see the artists. They like to see them create. It's not just being in gift shops and things like that. And so that was the magic.
Yeah, it was a
That
fun
was
place.
the part of, you know, why
Experience.
Bucktown was successful for a long time until it wasn't. So, yeah, but we don't have anything like that in Rock Island. There's shops, and I know about the Artery because that was part of,
Midcoast.
that was part of Midcoast as well. But it still didn't have that, the magic that Bucktown had, because
No.
it's set up differently. It was more retail, it had a gallery space. But if you're looking for something that nobody has right now, that's gonna be it.
And your artists will be all over it.
Yeah, some of us went to the Lincoln Center,
Yeah.
but, you know, that was very, you
Right.
know, like 4 of us went there.
Or the gallery in Bettendorf. On, huh?
But
Bereskin?
she closed.
I know, but when they open, I know
Yeah,
people went over there.
So following up on that too, I think Rock Island is a unique community for attracting entrepreneurs, you know, not the big corporate thing, but the people who have an idea or have a skill, and giving them a place to help them flourish. So even an incubator that targets entrepreneurs who make things, the locally made, not the big manufacturing things, but more locally made, having an incubator for them, I think would be a great attraction.
Shops
On
on
Second
Second.
does that.
Yeah.
to some
Yeah.
degree, but
It's more
not,
retail.
right, it's not so much art, but, right.
Yeah, but like, you know, like, didn't the Wild Cherry Spoon,
Yeah.
didn't they start out in that?
Yes.
But I mean, but
Bowling now.
especially a place for makers, as you call it now, or whatever, you know, an incubator specifically for that kind of thing.
Yeah, Wild Cherry Spoon Company, they were also nominated and awarded Illinois Maker, but my God, that business, you wouldn't believe, they're selling all over the US
Oh, yeah.
now. It's unbelievable, because it's sustainable wood that they use, and
Yep.
So for the sake of time, we've had some great conversations, but I want to put that a visual, right? Let's do that visual. So basically, you know, some recommendations, and a lot of you have all said them, you know, understanding that, yes, tourism's a regional approach, and we'll continue that, but also kind of why Rock Island? What are some recommendations, things we can do with this ARPA money that would, and some of them you've already said. So take one sticky in your Sharpie, do 10, do none, how many ever you want. Jean, I have some for you if you'd like to participate. And I'll come around and collect them, and I want to put them on the board, and just kind of get a visual of some kind of ideas that people have, recommendations of how we can grow tourism for Rock Island. We need an Iowa chair cushion. Our chairs are so uncomfortable back here. Oh, Jack, did you want to do some too? Sorry. I was like thinking I already gave. Okay, let me get you stickies. Was I looking on this side of the room? Thank you.
you want us to put them up on there, or?
You can, or I can come collect them. I sure need the steps.
These are events.
Anything, just recommendations that speak to tourism. What can we do with the ARPA money? Yeah, so an event would definitely be, you know, speaking to what Ben had recommended, having at, you know, one or two. Any kind of recommendations of how you think, you know, just city council, the city of Rock Island, how can we understanding
that
it's a regional
Yeah, that
approach,
caught
how
my
can we
eye.
stand
That's
out? How, why Rock Island? I moved here a few months ago. Why did I move to Rock Island, right?
So you said that
So-
$26.5 million, how much is going towards the tourism has
They
that
got
been determined?
lights.
250,000 towards specific things we can do
Already
with
neat
tourism.
turning
Yep.
point where we're gonna need to move
Yep.
out the way.
But I mean, it's not necessarily about the dollar amount.
Right,
Yeah.
right. I just didn't have any.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've heard of it, I've
So
never
just
looked at that
kinda
website though.
ideas, just to kind of get those. there's some things
So
to do
when
with this
does
money.
it's 250,000, right? And it has to be spent by when?
The end of 2024.
Oh, okay.
Six.
Actually, we put that in unrestricted, so we don't have a time limit.
But it
It would have been, we have to have it allocated
allocated
by
by
the end of.
2024, which is
Spend it
still
by
2
the end
more
of
years, and spent by 2026. We got plenty of time.
Plenty of time.
And, well, and we put it in unrestricted funds, I forgot about that, so we have some time, council has time. But these are really gonna help guide this focus group, you know, and if there's more to come out of this, like I said, I'll make sure to share minutes and all of those things with the group.
Do you think we'll gather together again, or?
I'm gonna make,
That's one of my ideas.
I'm gonna
Keep
talk
going.
about this on the 21st with council, and send some things out for them, once I get all the minutes from, we also had a homelessness focus group, and then a mental health focus group.
Yeah, I saw that.
And give council all that information, and then kind of see where they wanna go from there. So very well, this could eventually be some type of committees or something that meets somewhat maybe to, I don't wanna say the downtown, but we've got some others, we had a safety task force, some of those other things maybe. That's at the will of city council members, so yeah. There would be, I think there's an opportunity for it, I think Alderman Parker's, they,
I did pass out, because we had talked about events, and
oh, yeah.
there's a couple in there. Blink is amazing. They do that in Cincinnati. But there's a festival that's done in Japan that's all painted portraits. You can see a picture of it, and it's a parade. It could be tied in with other things.
You want me to take some of those?
Dylan had said, you know, you don't want to just throw out this money and then not be making money off of it.
Oh, okay.
You want to have it
Get
grow.
something else in it
Okay, sorry.
You know, just not
left.
toss it out there and then
We have limited resources.
right. Everybody's very limited, especially now.
Is this one mine?
Ironically,
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, no, I have one, so.
Nice bit of cash, but it's not the world. And that's what we're doing at Visit Quad City. Everybody, it's everybody's
Thank you.
responsibility.
Yes, thank you.
Samantha.
The summation,
Thanks,
the
Dylan.
information that I submitted, was that,
Put a lot of
is that
work
what you're
into
looking
that.
for? Okay.
And got a lot of
I just wanna make
feedback
sure that I
from
didn't
community and
miss
stakeholders
something
and
there,
residents.
so.
I don't know if I responded or not. I was
very
sick.
much wanna
I had
have further
a mother
conversation.
and toddlers, and they were sick last week,
my
so
gosh.
last week was like.
Yeah,
So-
no worry, I just wanted to make sure that
Thank you so much.
Okay, yeah, no, you're good. I'm sorry. I'm like, I meant to acknowledge.
you,
That I
you,
received
you may
it.
have, but
Okay.
I'm sure like everything right now is really kind of crazy. And I'm sure, you know, running
So
these
it's
is
funny, I
also
just had
adding a lot,
conversation. We
so.
had a board meeting a week or two ago, and I know Mayor Gallagher, so
Oh, no.
probably
I
get into
think-
Moline and Medical real quick. Mike was gone, so I talked to him, but I was gonna hopefully find time. And some of that is where I've had these discussions with
There has to be one.
mayors or different people.
If they want something news.
They're kind
I
of
prefer a city
and say,
council
hey,
member do
you're
it,
very
but.
spoken, you're pretty outgoing about this. It'd be great if you could come talk to council, because they're used to hearing me advocating for stuff, they're not used to hearing you advocate.
What did our mayor
Yeah.
retired or Rock Island?
Well, and one of the like, major things we're so far below the national average, and that's where some of that, and so that's where we have that like, oh, well,
Is that on
maybe
Wednesday?
that's why we're
Yeah.
behind.
There-
One of the things that came together.
Yep.
I've been on the board.
Yep.
We have this tourism plan,
how is your daughter?
framework. Okay.
Well,
If I was on the council,
most of ours are day trippers. So I mean, they're coming in, so we'll do probably 15 to 20 coaches a month. Sometimes more, sometimes less, depending upon the show and the time of year, but most of them are in, and they're going back in.
When my father had
This time of year, we'll see a lot more overnights because of the fall forward.
I think he was
Because
like
we
3 to
work
6 months.
pretty hand in hand
even
with
then, I'm
Celebration
still,
now.
like, sometimes
So we
now
share,
I'm still a little
so
dicey
we,
with him behind
we
the
share a
wheel.
lot of groups. Yeah, we share a lot of groups, especially this time of year.
Oh, good, I'm happy
They
to
bring
hear
them in
that.
fall foliage, they'll stay, they'll come see us, and they'll do something else. Usually the pavilion or something like that in Moline too, but, yeah. But most of the time, ours are coming in from like, we have a ton that come in from Peoria, but they're just hopping back, or southern Wisconsin, we get a lot from southern Wisconsin, or the Cedar Rapids, Iowa City area, but they're just down and back on the same day, they're not staying, so.
Right, but I just go and get my lunch.
Yeah.
Downtown, like, what are these people gonna do for the show? There's not a lot of options.
Right, yeah.
Anytime you get on your phone, you're being tracked.
Oh, we'll be done probably by the
It'd be nice if this kept going. There was really good dialogue, we didn't even get to cover everything, it'd be nice to keep going. Yeah. Part of that, we didn't really, we skirted that, we didn't really get into that, so.
Start loading
pretty nice house here in Rock Island or Bettendorf, whatever. I don't have to go to work, but maybe once every couple of weeks. I can use Chicago with a drive every couple of weeks. So then people can move here and establish.
Yeah.
How dare you?
National travel, people way outside of regions within that couple hours.
Right.
something goes left.
It's self-sufficient, yeah, it just keeps funding itself, yeah.
Come on, you came on right before I joined.
It's like 2 years. That's what I got.
Yeah, I get that too.
Yeah, that's be great to get back to that.
Quad cities think we're good.
Yeah.
Here's how we compare to like peers across the region, but also across the country. So where I used to, I didn't know what like that.
See you, Jack, take care.
I'm like, oh, thanks, no thanks, I'm not interested. And then I started to look, I was like, where is this place? And like, I've never heard of it, but that's okay.
Oh, sorry.
So look, it's like this is a pretty big community. And I look at all the
They all look the same.
Way to go, Roger. Steal my stuff.
Out of the way. Push me out of the way.
Out of sight, out of mind. I get it.
Yeah.
What's that? Anybody that wanted to pretty much tell it if I had like an overwhelming.
Find good things to do.
Bunch of 2020s, the workforce, I don't know where the heck they whether they just retire, a lot of